Hello, friends. Welcome back to the School of Self-Worth. I'm your host, Nicole Song. I've been hearing from a lot of you that you're feeling this very potent, intense combination of feelings, experiences of unmotivated and overwhelmed. And when you get into this headspace, it can be particularly difficult to make your way out of it. But today I'm going to talk about the three main causes of overwhelm for immigrant daughters, and I will be covering them in detail, and also one simple tool you can put into practice right away to move yourself out of it today. This is an episode you do not want to miss. And before we get started, if you are an ambitious, mission driven Asian American woman who wants to break generational cycles by manifesting a promotion in 60 days while working 20% fewer hours, DM me dream on Instagram at Nicole Song. I've got something for you. All right, friends, let's dig into this amazing conversation. All right, friends, if you tend to feel overwhelmed and your motivation feels drained by your job and it really has sunk to an all-time low, you are going to want to hear the three main reasons immigrant daughters get overwhelmed and what exactly you can do about it. So before we get going on this, let's get one thing straight. Overwhelm is a feeling. It is not a fact. It might feel like a fact sometimes. You're like, I cannot even tell you, Nicole, how many things are on my list. Yes. And it is a feeling, not a fact. So when it is a feeling, this is the cool part of it. It is also something you have a say in. It's not something that you are a victim of, something that you're never going to be able to shift. And the reason it's a feeling, let's get into this part of it. The reason it is a feeling is because overwhelm is caused by thinking. Overwhelm is literally a thinking problem. You're thinking about all the things that you have to do, from picking up your kid to getting the dog to daycare to making lunch, not to mention the hairy work situation you're kind of avoiding. So you're not wanting to sit down at your computer and answer the emails. And all of these things are colliding in your brain. And so you feel completely overwhelmed. You feel exhausted. You're like, I cannot keep going. Not to mention, if you're really going for it at work, you're trying to be more visible. You're trying to advocate for yourself, and you feel like you couldn't possibly do any of these things when you're feeling this way. And who could be motivated in that situation when there is such a stir in your brain? I mean, I wouldn't be motivated either. And I know what it's like to get into the state of overwhelm because I also experienced this. And it's something that I have really worked through the years, which is why I'm going to get into what the causes are and also how to move through it. At the same time, when you're in it, it feels so deep. It feels like this whirlpool that's sucking you down and you cannot escape. But here's the thing, like, how could you expect to be motivated when you have a list 20 miles long and you're sinking under the weight of it? Like, I don't think anybody could feel motivated in that situation. But I have also found that for immigrant daughters in particular, there is a special reason for this feeling of overwhelm. And there are some causes that you may not have considered. So I'm really excited to share those with you. I know that this will make such a difference for you. It makes a difference for my clients when we start to identify these different layers and levels of challenge and what is actually creating this whirlpool challenge situation. So, this is what I call the Asian pressure cycle. And when you see it laid out, like I'm about to do, it can be pretty tough to look at. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I'm being buried under this a little bit. But there's also a gem, and this is what I always think about. Self awareness and understanding really brings so much insight. So, when you can start to be aware of the things that are causing this deep level of pressure, this experience of overwhelm, that's when you can start to move to the other side. So I think there's a lot of value in looking at it, dissecting it, understanding it, so then you can know how to make a shift. So we're going to dig in just a moment on the Asian pressure cycle. And I'm also going to share too for myself. I experienced a lot of these things. And even for me to this day, there are some that I'm still excavating. There are still some that I'm uncovering and recognizing like, wow, that's really what's causing me to feel this way. And when the perfectionism comes up or that high pressure comes up, like I must execute a certain way, I have to go back and look and be like, which of these three is causing it? Is it one? Is it two? Or is it all three? And when I can do that, then I actually start to free myself up. I'm like, oh, right, this is just something that's occurring to me. It's not something that I have to allow in to experience. So let's get into this Asian pressure cycle. The first one is the one that I often like to skip. It's the one that I don't like to look at all the time. And it's a really important one. And this one is when you are in the habit of making other people happy. So this particular kind of pressure is happens a lot, comes up a lot in Asian families. Asian culture tends to value the collective. They value the whole. So when you're looking at the collective and the whole, your whole job is to make other people happy. Like that's literally what it looks like, making sure everybody is okay. So you might have grown up doing that. You wanted to make sure your parents were okay, your siblings, your neighbors, your friends, your coworkers. And so you're always trying to make sure they're okay. And then on top of it, you're probably trying to make sure that they are proud. So if your parents sacrifice in any way, and if they're immigrants, they likely sacrificed in quite a few ways. You want to make sure that their sacrifice was worth it. You want to make sure that they are feeling like, wow, my kids are doing so well. All that sacrifice was a good thing. And so you might have goals that are now about what other people want rather than what you want. And when we get into this kind of pressure, that's pretty intense. You're always trying to make other people happy. The people pleaser in you gets really extreme in this situation. And it can be very difficult to know yourself underneath that pressure. And so when that pressure is always around other people, it's an important distinction to see like, wow, like, am I doing this for myself or am I doing it to make other people happy? So this first one I feel like is very particular again to Asian American women, to immigrant children who come from cultures where that wholeness is more important, because the other piece of it is to remember that we live in a very individualist culture in the United States. It's all about, standing out, speaking up, advocating for yourself. And now you're in this, I think of it this as like this pull from two different directions. It's like a little tug of war over which one do I listen to. So that's the first piece of the Asian pressure cycle of like, okay, I am always trying to make everybody else happy. The second piece of the cycle is you grew up in a society that is always telling you that everything about you is not enough. That's really American culture. Society basically does this. Like, it's always like through diet culture, for example, your body is not the right shape, it's not the right size, it's not the right height, your skin color is the wrong color. You also might be hearing there's a consumer culture that's telling us like our current lives are not enough. You better go buy a new car, or you make sure you upgrade your makeup, or you make sure you get a different outfit. And that's when you're going to be enough. So when you look around, it's like, oh, okay, now you have to work out. And now if you have that kind of muscle or that kind of body, then you will be enough. And you really look around our culture, and this everyone experiences this one. It's constantly telling us your current life, you should not be satisfied with the life that you have. And that wears on us. I mean, it's sort of this constant undertone. It's like we are living in this, we're fish in a bowl and the water is this not enough water, and it's everywhere. And so when you can start to see that that is putting pressure on you, like I am trying to go for things in my job, or I'm trying to change my job or earn more money, or any of the things that you're feeling are coming from this constant not enough. Or just, I find often for many women, is also this deeper sense of unease, like something is wrong with my life as it is. And if you're noticing that coming up, it's really worthwhile to understand that you were raised that way. You were raised in a place that says that all the time. And we have to watch also, our brains have a big negativity bias. And so as soon as that idea is planted, it's so easy to spiral down. So understand that this is where we exist, this is where we live, but this is also a very big part of the Asian pressure cycle. Okay, and then this leads me to the third part. And this one is about assimilation. So, as a woman of color, you've probably spent your whole life trying to assimilate and to be accepted. You want to belong. You want other people to approve of your choices. You want to fit in with everybody else. And you're doing it in a culture that isn't always kind or welcoming or open to your experiences. So, this is pretty much any experience you ever had as a kid, where maybe someone made fun of the lunch you were eating, or commented on your eyes or your hair or your skin tone or anything. And when you've spent your whole life trying to get approval from people who may never approve of you, like, can you imagine, can you notice and observe for yourself how much pressure that has created? And again, this is one where I have to really look and see how much that was happening. Like, I remember as a kid, I wanted different color. I wanted blonde hair and blue eyes. Like, you see the dominant culture around you, and you're always trying to be worthy of that. You're always trying to make that acceptable. And some of us have made more progress than others on this, but it's just important for us to understand and be aware that it is all around. Like, that's the way you grow up when you are a woman of color, an immigrant daughter in this country. And the more you can start to understand, like, that could be causing the pressure you're experiencing, it's really helpful. To me, it's freeing. It's like, oh, wow, like, that's just me trying to be accepted and trying to make myself someone who I am not, instead of coming back to who I really am. It's helpful to also understand how much energy you have spent doing this, and actually what a waste of energy it is to try to get people to accept you, because the truth is, acceptance is about so many more things than what other people think. But understand that you have exerted a tremendous amount of effort your whole life for that, and you may not even have recognized what a toll that has taken. So I know a lot of this sounds heavy, but it's important for us to recognize it, because the other thing to remember about all three of these things is these are all thinking problems. These are all things that were created by experiences, and then your brain started programs and took off with them, putting pressure on you, trying to make you look like everybody else, trying to make everyone happy, and starting to, like, really say, okay, like, I'm going to try to accommodate this particular pressure. I find it is overwhelm comes from any of these things. It's very common to feel overwhelmed, even thinking about one of them, and you might recognize all three could be at play at any given time. So, we are going to look at the simplest way to start to move out of this pressure cycle. And we're going to use one of my absolute favorite strategies from the Asian visibility system. Some of you may have heard this one before, but the reason I keep sharing it is because this is a practice we have to do every day, literally for the rest of our lives. When you are someone who's always trying to make other people happy or are in a perfectionist mode, it's so essential to do this practice. So, this practice is about learning your own preferences. When we are in a constant state of deferral or trying to make other people happy or get their approval, the way we usually do it is by asking what they want. Like, how do they feel? What do they want first? How do how do you feel? Women do this a lot in relationship. I see this a lot with women, my clients, around their families. They're always making sure that, their spouse or their kids come first, rather than seeing what they need. So the gem here is for you to learn your own preferences and learn what you want. And the way to understand and see what your preferences are is to do a really simple experiment. Think about the next time you're going to go out for a meal with a good friend, where you guys haven't planned the meal, and then look and see if you can decide what meal, like, where do you want to go eat. And if you're anything like how I used to be, my preference was always like, oh, whatever she wants is good. Oh yeah, I'm sure she has a suggestion, and I'll just go along with that. So if you're I'll go along with that kind of person. This is the place for you to start to look and change that programming, and understand that you do have preferences. You just need to start giving it a different association and train yourself to see that you do have something to say, and that you are going to say it out loud. I like to start with meals because I'm totally obsessed with food. If you didn't know that already about me, it's one of my favorite things. And then it's a really fun place for us to play. Like, for me personally, this is where I started to practice preference, stating my preferences. Is I would always defer with friends to meals. And then I was like, no, 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 no. I'm going to tell them I want to eat Korean barbecue tonight. I'm going to tell them I want to try out that new Filipino restaurant. And I'm not going to die on recommendation, but I am going to say it and see what they do. And then to my great shock, like they pretty much almost always were like, yeah, totally, that sounds great. Unless there was like some logistical reason they couldn't do it. So we want to practice and notice where we're deferring to other people. Even when my husband sometimes asks me what I want to eat or what I want to do, I have to be like, okay, Nicole, you do have a preference, because my autopilot is to be like, whatever you want is fine. So notice if you're doing that. So I want you to just practice for this next meal with a friend. Like, where do you really want to eat? If you're like me, I have a whole list on my phone. Where do you want to eat? What meal do you want to have? And then you're going to message her and say, hey, I'm so excited to check out this new place. Do you want to go? And then see what they say. And she'll probably say yes, by the way. And this is your practice. You identify what you want to eat. And then the next step is you say it out loud. So I want you to do this as a practice. I want you to do it for the next meal. And I want you to notice and see, the more you do this, the more you'll understand you do have an authentic voice that's true to you. And you'll also discover that you can speak up with it. And now all of a sudden, there is no overwhelm. There is no craziness going on. You're just like, no, I'm clear. I do know. I'm not overwhelmed by all the millions of things that other people want me to do. I know what I need to do and what's next for myself. And I will say, this preference practice is literally one you have to do for the rest of your life. Like, this is not a simple one you can do one off and you're done. You actually need to keep working on it. So I want you to just at least practice it today. Think about the next meal you're going on with a friend, and then start to bring this into play. And also, if you're going for the next level of this, I want you to notice every time you're deferring to other people. Maybe you don't do this work, you only do this in your personal life, but it matters no matter what. Because if you're doing it in your personal life, it is actually probably still happening at work in some way. Where do you defer? Where do you let other people speak first? Where do you let yourself hold back instead of going forward for the thing that you really, really want? All right. So I wanted you guys to DM me. Let me know how this goes. Message me on Instagram at Nicole Song. Let me know what you discover. And if you're an ambitious Asian American woman who wants to manifest your dream job or dream promotion in 60 days, message me dream and let's connect. All right, friends, thanks so much. I'll see you next week.